Welcome to Days of Roar, Detroit Tigers podcast, brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. My name is Mark Gorash. I'm here with Tigers beat writer Evan Petzold. Had a day full of baseball. We're starting to actually see games that resemble real baseball in another week. Can't wait. So how you making out down there?
Yeah, I'm hanging in there, man. It's not just like a lot of baseball today. It's a lot of baseball every single day. And it's been that way since I got down here in the middle of February. And I'm enjoying the sunshine. I'm enjoying the weather. I'm enjoying the beautiful walks around Lake Hollingsworth here that I get in almost daily. Those are really enjoyable, but it's also a lot of long days, man. I mean, it was Thursday going to Fort Myers. I spent like 5 hours in the car to go see a bunch of minor league kids playing against the Red Sox, and primarily went for Reese Olson and then a couple other side projects that I'm working on. So it was a trip well spent, of course. But again, like 5 hours in the car and then a quick turnaround, early morning clubhouse the next day. You start to feel the grind of spring training, but we're hanging in there. I'm looking forward to the off day. I can't complain too much, though, because I love my job. The weather's beautiful and it's baseball, right? Like, it doesn't get any better than this. And it was really nice to be able to see the Tigers face a real lineup on Sunday. I thought that was really cool to see them face some real dudes: DJ LeMahieu, Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, Anthony Rizzo, Giancarlo Stanton. Those are some dudes right there. And so that was a lot of fun. I thought it was a pretty good test for the two pitchers there, Matt Manning and Casey Mize. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm making the most of it, and we're chugging along.
I think it'll be less of a grind, hopefully soon, when starters play longer, minor leaguers play less, pitchers go deeper, and some more real baseball things start getting exposed, both in a good and a bad way. So let's start out top of mind with question number one of the big two. Everybody seems in a panic over the fact that Javier Báez is making very little contact. I would tend to disagree with that, but we can talk about a few things and see if we can add some context and see where the conversation takes us. So what's your thoughts? You've been watching him every day. You watch him in BP. You watch him behind the scenes. You talk to him. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you thinking?
I'm concerned. I'm very, very concerned. I don't care about the numbers, even though I kind of do care about the numbers. It's tough to look at a guy who, entering Monday, is 0 for 11 with 5 strikeouts. Now, he's seeing 3.7 pitches per plate appearance, which is up from 3.6 last season. Make of that what you will. Absolutely nothing is what you should make of it. And this is a guy who is still swinging at a ton of pitches. He's still swinging outside of the strike zone, but we knew that was going to be an issue for him. It's always been, Javier Báez swinging at sliders down and away. Javier Báez expanding the strike zone and getting wild with his swing, but I just don't see any differences in the swing. Like, the swing is the same, the movements are the same, and that's what's concerning to me more than anything. It's like the swing hasn't changed, the movements haven't changed, the approach hasn't changed. We knew that the approach wasn't going to change, though, because he's been the same hitter his entire career. I don't know how anybody can ever expect him not to just suddenly, like, how can you expect Javier Báez to suddenly start laying off sliders down and away? Like, it's never going to happen. But
It's not going to happen.
But on top of that, though, other things haven't changed. Like, the swing hasn't changed. The mechanics haven't changed. Apparently, the core muscles in the back are supposed to be strengthened, but at the same time, like, swing is still crazy wild and all over the place. I guess the only hope for me right now is that Joey Cora, the infield coach, who also coaches third base, can turn Javier Báez into above average defender again. Let's not forget, he was worth +2 defensive runs saved in 3 back in 2022. It was -4 defensive runs saved. I like the OAA metric. I think it's good, generally speaking, but I do think that it overvalues the most difficult plays, which Javi Báez always makes because he's spectacular defensively in that way, but he really struggles to make the routine plays. So I do think that the Tigers have to get the most out of him defensively. I'm concerned about the offense. I really am. I'm seeing the same old from Javi Báez, and that's scary.
Well, let's get into some minutia. I will say to you, I can sum up Javi Báez the way I watch what I'm watching. What you're saying about it looks exactly the same. Of all the things that I watched today that were most concerning to me, that was the single most concerning part. It looked exactly like last year. Wasn't on time, wasn't seeing things, was very defensive, got down in the count. It was just basic ugliness. Okay. He did make some good contact the second time up on a high fastball. Did it pretty well, the dead center. But here's something that when I decided to do a little homework actually did concern me a little bit. And here's what it is. Javier Báez as a spring training hitter. Is there any history about it? So here you go. First spring training, 2013. 298 and 13, 264 and 14, a terrible 182 and 15, 200 in 2016, so 2 bad years. Then 2017, when he was an established all-star, if not regular by then, 250, 218, and he hit 257, 219, hit 313, 2020, hit 324. So for the 4 years prior to him being the Detroit Tiger, again, 257, 313, 324 in those last 3 years. Okay. Pretty damn good. Since he's been a Tiger, 160, 206 in 2022, 167 last year, 0 for 11, means he's currently 13 for 81 as a Detroit Tiger in spring training. Concerning? Yeah. Not unfair to be concerned about it. You know, the solution.
Wait. Aren't you the guy who says spring training stats don't matter? Didn't you just get on this podcast last week and warn everybody not to look deep into the numbers and into the what we're seeing? And you just listed his numbers from his entire career.
Well, I wanted to see historically when Javier Báez was a good player or a good hitter versus now, was there any correlation? Because I thought it was a fair piece of data to look at. If he'd never been a good hitter in spring training, not much to worry about, right? Because many years he was a really good hitter in the regular season.
Well, Mark, he if you look at the numbers that you just read off, it looks like he was a good hitter in spring training when he was a good hitter in the regular season. And it looks like, as you mentioned, the numbers with the Tigers, it looks like he's a bad hitter in spring training when he's been a bad hitter in the regular season. I don't think that's surprising at all.
Well, but
I think that tells you he's a bad hitter.
Well, yes, he's been a bad hitter for the Detroit Tigers. Is it worth being concerned? Sure, it's always worth being concerned because he's been a bad hitter. But it's real simple with Javier Báez. You know, his bar of being acceptable is pretty low. And you and I have talked about it many times. It has to do with 3 words. Be on time. If Javier Báez Javier Báez is not on time, he is not going to hit. And they're going to give him a while to try to resolve it, but they're not going to give him forever this time. Not on a team that they think can win. I'm not sure what the resolution would be. I can promise you it won't be Eddie Leonard at shortstop, which will really make a lot of stupid people upset. But there will be somebody else playing shortstop if Javier Báez is going to hit 195. That I can promise you. How long will that take? Probably half a year. But if we get to June and you see a lot of what you've seen for 3 months, which will make out of 15 months he's been a Tiger, that he was offensively useful for 2 out of the 15 months, yeah, I would assume at that point in time, if the team is a viable entity, that they'll start thinking about if there are other alternatives, no matter how mad he's going to get. But it's still March 4th, and things get worked out in spring training. And you just have to have some faith that a guy that's got a lot of home runs and a lot of runs batted in and some all-star appearances and some World Series magic in his career might figure it out. Am I going to start panicking after 11 at-bats? Not part of my DNA. How about yours?
I'm with you on that. I mean, look, it is only 11 at-bats, and this guy very quickly could turn it around. He could lock in the timing, and we could see a much better Javier Báez. We know that he's somebody who I think maybe more than anybody is capable of having a quick turnaround and getting hot for 2 weeks and when you're hot for 2 weeks, maybe that could turn into something a little bit more than just heating up. Maybe that could turn into something real. So I think, Javi's the kind of player who can do that. And I think we got to give him time to see if he can actually do that. But you're right. Like, Ryan Kreidler better be ready to go. I mean, that guy can sure as hell flash the leather. Like, he knows how to play defense at such an elite rate. And he's going to stay ready in AAA Toledo as shortstop, right? Like, Ryan Kreidler needs to stay ready to go. I think that there's maybe nobody on this team who could ultimately play a bigger role than Ryan Kreidler coming up and ending up maybe getting a bulk of the opportunity at shortstop. That very well could be the case. Like, I don't want to speak too soon because we have a long way to go until we get there, but I think it's paramount that Ryan Kreidler has his eye on helping the Detroit Tigers in the second half of the 2024 season, specifically as the primary shortstop. Because if things go south, Javier Báez is not going to be able to be in the lineup every day, batting the 8-hole, giving the Tigers nothing on offense, right? And again, questionable defense as well. Like, you talk and you ask around, right? And you ask about, well, Javi's OAA is really good. His outs above average are excellent. And it's, OAA kind of overvalues the extreme plays. Javier Báez, go look at the DRS. It's not that great. Defensive runs saved. Like, there are some concerns there defensively as well. So if you're not getting what you want offensively, and if the Tigers don't think that the defense, specifically on the routine plays and the throws to first base that should be crisp, if those aren't there, you don't have offense or defense, what are you really bringing? And that's a concern.
I like his defense more than you do, but there's a certain frustration level. If you're not hitting it all and you're not walking it all, at some point in time, somebody else is going to start getting some of your at-bats. It's a fact of Major League life. So do I think that's on the horizon? I think it's in the equation. I think after 11 at-bats, I'm going to check in every week for the next few weeks, and we're going to see where we're at. If he's still swinging like this, I'm not going to be the one saying something to him. I can promise you AJ Hinch is going to be the man in the sunglasses going to say something to him because, AJ's not going to put up with this either. So it's something to take under advisement. But do I think people should be running around in circles, slapping each other in a panic? Yeah, I don't think so yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Question number 2 of the big 2. What's some of the biggest developments from the first 10 spring games, if there are any? What are you seeing? What are you hating? What are you liking?
Velocity, and more velocity. That has stood out to me above all else so far in these spring training games. Wilmer Flores, Kyler Montero, Matt Manning, Casey Mize, Tarik Skubal, Jack Flaherty, Drew Anderson. Have you heard of the guy? He was throwing 93 when he was last in the big leagues, goes to Japan for 2 years, comes back and he's hitting 98 on the gun. And like he said that he knew he had it in him somewhere. Every pitcher has it in him, he says, but it was going through work with Robin Lund and Chris Fetter and Juan Nieves and working on the way that his body is moving. That got him from going from a guy who was throwing 93 back in 2021 when he was last in the big leagues to hitting 98 with the Tigers. That's just incredible. Wilmer Flores, I think, is a perfect example. A guy who hit 99.9 miles per hour in his first spring training game. He hit 99 in his second spring training game as well. So this is a guy who's done it back-to-back times. Last season, he averaged 92.9 miles per hour and maxed out at 97.1 miles per hour. So the fastball has jumped significantly for Wilmer Flores. It's all about the way that his body's moving down the mound. Robin Lund, Chris Fetter, they told him, hey, you got to move your body faster down the mound. You literally have to go faster. Like, don't slow down, go faster. And that's what he did. And we've seen the fastball tick up. We've seen the slider tick up. We've seen the curveball tick up for Wilmer Flores. Again, like, fastball is sitting around 97, 98 right now. And it was sitting like 92, 93 last year. That's an incredible jump. He's also added 4 more inches of induced vertical break from 12.2 to 16.2, meaning his fastball is getting more ride up in the zone. That's a huge, huge part of the equation for him. The slider, I mean, it's a harder, firmer slider going from like 84 miles an hour up to 88 miles an hour. The curveball is ticked up too from 78 to 81. We also see his curveball traveling on a straighter path with more topspin. Wilmer Flores is a perfect example of what we're seeing across the board with Tigers pitchers. And it all comes down to what's going on with Chris Fetter and Robin Lund and Juan Nieves. The pitching department has figured something out with these guys because Casey Mize and Matt Manning, they both improved on velocity and induced vertical break, meaning they're getting more ride, they're throwing harder. Jack Flaherty is suddenly holding his velocity, albeit only across like 20 pitches right now, but he's holding it at 95 miles an hour. That's not normal for him. That isn't. And so the Tigers have clearly unlocked something on the pitching side of things. I don't think we can discredit Scott Harris either. This is a pitching guy. I remember first when he got hired, I called around and talked to some people with the Chicago Cubs, and they had said that he was really obsessed with pitching and had found some new ways of going about things in the Cubs organization. We mentioned him targeting guys like Michael Lorenzen and Jack Flaherty, trying to help rebuild their careers, help get them back on track as starters. It's no surprise that the pitching side of things is the bread and butter for Scott Harris. So I'm not surprised that they've taken this step forward, but I'm impressed. I'm really impressed with what I'm seeing out of the pitching department. It's kind of been mind-blowing. Like the Tigers have really taken a lot of these pitchers and they've went from, a group with a lot of raw talent to a group that's like actually putting up real numbers and doing real things, both metrically and with the eye test too. Now, a lot of it's going to be about execution, which is what's being preached, but everything else is there, and a lot of it has to do with the biomechanics, the way the body's moving. Robin Lund has done a fantastic job. Chris Fetter as well. It's a Lund, Fetter, Harris, Nieves masterpiece.
I think it's a collective. I think it's a team philosophy. I think a lot of these guys were evaluated amidst what was available and were hand-chosen over other people based upon some of the team philosophy. So I don't think that part is an accident. I'd love at some point in time for you to have a discussion with Scott Harris and Ryan Garko. Obviously, you can't talk to Chris Fetter, but I'd be very curious how the groupthink was on some of these arms that they've picked up. I mean, obviously, they have a type when it comes to their 39th or 40th man from a hitting standpoint. They rotate those guys like, they're revolving doors, and they have a type. And I'm sure they have a similar type when it comes to pitchers. But the other thing is, I think we need to get our buddy Nick Pollack to at least do some type of audio where we have him explain IVB so people understand what it is. But basically, the simplest way I could give an English translation, and you correct me because you're real good at this too, is, at the top, pitchers like throw fastballs at the top of the zone. And when it does not allow the ball to be impacted by gravity based upon spin and release point, and it stays on plane for the longest period of time at the top of the zone, you get not only an optical illusion for hitters, but at the same time, it's more difficult to hit too, because it stays flatter and on plane. And that's the best way I could try to explain it. You want to add anything to that or no?
Yeah, I mean, it just looks like it's rising. It looks like it's a rising fastball to the hitter, right? And you'll see it if you're watching from, behind the pitcher's mound and you're watching a game and it looks like the fastball is traveling up. That's exactly what it is. And above average induced vertical break is 18 inches or more. If you can hit 20, it's elite. But again, like there are certain pitchers like Wilmer Flores who is now up to 16 inches of induced vertical break, but he's also throwing with elite extension. So his fastball is already playing up on top of that as well. So imagine a guy who's throwing 99 and he's throwing with his type of extension. That fastball is going to look like it's coming in even faster as well. So there's multiple things to consider with fastballs, but the point is I think that we've seen the Tigers take a step forward with fastballs, like specifically, and that's been really impressive to me. We've seen guys' stuff across the board tick up, even their secondary pitches, and I think that's really cool. But fastballs in general, you can throw a good fastball and you can establish a good fastball. You can really start to play things off of that pitch, and that's really how you establish yourself, and that's how you're able to get to strike one, and you're able to work and do some things. And yeah, you can pitch backwards sometimes. That I get that, but at the same time, if you can bring it with a fastball and you got the heater, that opens up a world of opportunities. And the Tigers have done a good job of taking steps forward with that. And it's not just with the guys like Tarik Skubal and Matt Manning and Casey Mize and Jack Flaherty. Those guys are all important, don't get me wrong. But it's also with, it's with Wilmer Flores and a Kyber Montero, that next wave of pitchers that are coming through the system. it's really good to see.
Yeah, it's good to see. We're going to talk specifically about certain pitchers, that we all saw today or that you've seen a few more times than that a little later, maybe a little in the next segment. First, we're going to take a break. We'll be back in 60. All right. So we're starting to get to the part of spring training when you declare who's going to be your opening day starter. And AJ Hinch anointed Tarik Skubal to be this year's opening day starter, taking the place of Matthew Boyd. Quite the upgrade there. And
Eduardo Rodriguez, actually. But
excuse me, Eduardo Rodriguez. So you had a talk with Tarik. He was pretty funny about it, but tell us what he had to say.
I love where Tarik Skubal is at right now. I mean, he is in such a good headspace. It screams ace. It screams frontline starter. It screams Cy Young candidate. It screams, game one starter in the postseason, which is what Tarik Skubal wants. He's downplayed a lot of questions about being the ace of the staff, about being a Cy Young candidate, about being the opening day starter, but now he is officially the opening day starter. And I asked him why he downplayed that. He talked a lot about not really caring about labels. And he said that's the media's job, is to put labels on guys. And then he flat out said it. I'm going to quote him. Quote, being the starter game one of the playoffs is a little bit more special. So that's where I'm at. End quote. And I thought that was really cool for a guy to come out and say something like that. Yes, he was very appreciative of being the opening day starter. That was something that he did not take lightly. But I think just building upon that, he knows what the end goal is. He knows where this team wants to be. And I think he knows ultimately where this team can be. He looks around the room and he sees the talent. He sees the young hitters on offense. He sees, that dynamic pitching staff that the Tigers have with, a lot of question marks, sure, but also a lot of upside as well. I mean, look, if Jack Flaherty can be the best version of himself, he's going to be pretty good. If Kenta Maeda is the best version of himself, he'll be pretty good. Tarik Skubal, we know what we're going to get out of him. How about Casey Mize? If Casey Mize comes back and he's the best version of himself, that's a pretty good pitcher too. So you look at Matt Manning as well. I mean, he's looked great. So when you think about the upside of the starting rotation, when you think about the young hitters and what could be there, I see it. The Tigers see it. Skubal definitely sees it. He's not afraid to talk about it, but he deserves it. He deserves this honor. I mean, this is a guy who came back from flexor tendon surgery last season, and when healthy, he was the best pitcher in baseball last season. He was literally the best among all pitchers coming off of his July 4th return, worth 3.3 FWAR, at ranked number one among pitchers. 2.80 ERA, 14 walks, 102 strikeouts in 80 and 1/3 innings in 15 starts. He was dominant in September, won AL Pitcher of the Month. The sky's the limit for Tarik Skubal. I don't think anybody deserves it more. His teammates were really happy for him. AJ Hinch got to announce it inside the clubhouse with everybody all in there. And he said, hey, look, he said, real games are played in March. So that's why he announced that on March 1st and made that a deal. And everybody was really happy for Skubal. And I know I am too. He's a good guy.
March 28th, opening day. Scoobs will be starting. Excited to see his development. Excited to see if he can stay healthy. Hope he can. He'll do great things if he does stay healthy. And big honor for any big leaguer to start opening day, especially on a team that has some possibilities of being good. All right, let's roll through some of what you've seen from some of these pitchers. They're getting their first starts. Some are getting their second. I'm really excited to see their third and fourth. I've DM'd you a few times about that. But yeah, today was kind of fun. But talk to us about Kenta Maeda. He's very experienced, which is a kind way of saying he's kind of old. He really understands how to prep for a season. Not somebody that's not familiar with having some arm or elbow issues. So I'm sure he's being careful about it. So he had a start. Didn't exactly have great velo. Tell us what you found out, how fun he is to interact with, which I hear is pretty fun. So give us a few minutes on Kenta Maeda.
Yeah, he's a great dude behind the scenes, somebody that I think is going to really benefit the Tigers. Not only guys like Casey Mize and Shelby Miller and Matt Manning who throw splitters, but, we're talking about guys just across the room, like everybody. I mean, he's a fun guy to be around, somebody who is really invested in the team. He's not just kind of off by himself doing his own thing. He's pretty locked into everything that the team is doing as a whole, which I think is a lot of fun. But yeah, he came out and he had his first start in spring training, and his first pitch was an 89-mile-an-hour fastball. And the moment he threw that pitch, I saw some people out on Twitter who were already complaining about, what a terrible move it was. Wow, Kenta Maeda, only throwing 89 miles an hour. But you're right. This is a guy who's a veteran. He's been there, done that. Go to freep.com. Please read about Kenta Maeda. Any story that I've written, I'm pretty sure I mentioned it. He only threw one bullpen in Japan before reporting to spring training in mid-February. So some guys, they pitch all offseason long. Kenta Maeda doesn't really pitch that much during the offseason. He throws a bullpen in Japan, comes to the United States for spring training, and then he finally starts his ramp-up process. That's why he's only made one start in spring training so far, whereas everybody else in the starting rotation has made 2 starts. So Maeda is still in this build-up process. So I understand his fastball averaged 89 miles an hour. It was a low of 87, a high of 90. But we got to go back and look at last year's spring training as well. In last year's spring training, he averaged 90.1 miles an hour in his first game, and then he averaged 91 throughout the regular season last year. So it's a perfect example of a guy who's going to build up a couple of ticks of velocity over time. He's going to be just fine. What I found more impressive was the fact that the secondary stuff was nasty, and he was locating it as well. The fastball command wasn't great. The fastball velocity wasn't great, but the secondary stuff was really good, and he's mixed in a new slider that has sweeping action as well. So he's got 2 versions of his slider. Obviously, he's got the split. That's his primary pitch. It's the slider and the split combination that I think is really good. And now he's added a new type of slider with more sweeping action, that I noticed during the game, and I thought that was really fascinating as well. So this is a guy who not only is really good, not only is really experienced, but is also taking steps to get even better. I think that's a good sign. That's definitely another example of the Chris Fetter effect, somebody who's able to kind of get in Maeda's ear and say, hey, look, here's how we can take you to the next level and help you get even better in a first full season coming off Tommy John surgery.
So maybe 2 more starts before we really start seeing how it's coming together for Maeda. Probably get his fastball velo up into the 90, 91 mile an hour range. We'll see how everything else plays. Jack Flaherty is now thrown twice. A lot of buzz that he's kept his velocity for the first 25 pitches of an outing. He should be pretty happy. What'd you see when you saw him?
Yeah, not even 25 pitches, 21 pitches to be exact, which I'm only saying that because, that was the big question coming out of his last start was why only 21 pitches? And AJ Hinch explained, they felt like it was more important for him to have the ups, as they call it, which means basically an up-down. So you pitch an inning, you go sit down, you get back up off the bench, you go back out there and you pitch another inning. That was more important than building the volume at this point in spring training. Now we should expect more volume as we get to the middle of spring training, and those 2 things will coincide where he's building volume and also getting even more ups. So we're going to see him get to the 3, the 4, the 5 inning threshold throughout spring training, and the volume is going to go up in terms of his total pitches too. But also the guy's been really efficient. He's been really, really pitch efficient. I think all the stuff has played pretty well so far. I think the secondary stuff looks good. The biggest thing, again, is like the fastball and the way he's moving down the mound. It's all about the delivery. And if he has a clean delivery, we're going to see a better version of his fastball. His fastball used to be really, really good. You go back and you look at when he had his, the most success that he's ever had in his career back with the Cardinals in 2019. And even a few years after that, he had a couple good runs. And when he was at his best, it was because he was throwing his fastball and dominating with his fastball. So getting him back to a good fastball is the key. And you do that by cleaning up the delivery. The Tigers feel like they've done a good job of that. And now it's going to be combining that and having him hold that over a long start. We've seen him do it over 21 pitches, but the question becomes, can you do it over 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80? And then, I mean, that number goes up, right? Like 100 is a lot different than 20. So that's what I'm looking forward to seeing. I am very cautiously optimistic about Jack Flaherty at this point because I like what I see, but I got to see more of it, and I got to see it for longer stretches.
I'm a skeptic. Need to see him throw 50 or 60 pitches. I'll actually evaluate what I'm seeing when I see him do that. Glad to see the velo's up because the alternative, if the velo wasn't up, would be much more concerning to me, but I'm glad to see he's off to a good start. We'll check back in a couple more outings, see where he's really at. Let's talk about some other things that are starting to get pretty exciting. First, I want to touch on Reese Olson. Second start, little rocky in the first inning of the second start. Then we saw a little 2023 August, September Reese Olson for the next 7 or 8 hitters. It was encouraging because he hadn't really looked too good in his 2 outings, and he seemed to find it a little bit after a little adversity, which is something you kind of like to see in spring training.
Yeah, definitely better second outing compared to the first outing for him. He really had an execution problem in his first start, which was the first game of spring training. And then he did a better job of executing in his second start. Still, it was a 42-pitch second start across 2 innings. So that's a lot of pitches to throw across 2 innings. I didn't like that very much. All 4 hits from the Red Sox, they were all against fastballs. I think that's still the big thing for him is the secondary stuff is really good. We know it's good, but he's got to locate the fastball better. He just has to. Because, again, he throws it at 95 miles an hour, but it's a pitch that's been hit for the most damage against him throughout his professional career. It has some arm side run. So when he gets predictable with the fastball, when opponents know it's coming and they're able to sit fastball in those situations, it's really easy for them to hit. It's also easy for them to hit for damage. So again, when you give up 4 hits and all of them run fastballs, and that's been the pitch that you struggled with the most throughout your career, that tells me that he really still needs to lock in the command of the fastball a little bit more. Because when he was at his best last season, especially down the stretch in September, he was locating the fastball, painting it all around the strike zone. And it was just, you can't hit it when it's painted like that. But if you leave something that leaks out over, guys aren't going to miss that. So I think he's done a good job of blending his pitches. I think the Tigers are going to continue to work with him on his mix, how he's going to attack hitters, what's the best way to go about it. Again, this is still a guy who's young and still learning. So I think the more and more reps he's going to get, the more comfortable he's going to get, just with how he needs to be mixing his pitches, start by start, right? Especially as we get into the season and scouting reports are out there and trends are out there and teams are focusing on all those things. He's going to have to keep an eye on that fastball. But so far, so good. I thought it was a nice stepping stone from him from first start to second start.
All right, so let's talk about some things we saw today. Some were incredibly encouraging relative to what we've seen before. And we'll talk about Casey Mize too, because there was some good, some bad, but mostly good. But let's talk about Matt Manning. A lot of people, not big Matt Manning fans. You and I like him more than most. My buddy Brandon Day likes him also. Really good fastball without elite velocity in the 2 seasons prior to this. We have seen him throw, we talked about this before, we have seen him throw up to 100 in spring training before. So it gets kind of puzzling when he starts throwing 92.5 during the regular season, and then the last inning of an outing, he pumps it up to 95. This is some of the things that frustrate you about Matt Manning in seasons past, although his fastball from a results standpoint has been very good. So first outing, threw pretty hard, 95 plus, quite a bit. But today was just wow. It was just wow.
I'm in love with Matt Manning. I'm in love with Matt Manning again. It's only taken me like 3 years, but I'm back in love with Matt Manning again.
I mean, just for the record, people, even after the Soto home run, during the first inning, we were DMing each other like, wow, what is this? Okay. Some really interesting stuff. Fastball, really, really good. Not especially commanded, but reasonably commanded. Stayed at the top of the strike zone almost all the time, which is not that unusual for him, but it was more pronounced than normal. Got up to 97.1 today, I saw. Okay. Constantly above 95, constantly above 96. Got some swing and misses on fastballs. And really, it faced the best Yankee hitters that they had to offer. Yes, gave up a homer to Soto on a spinner right down the middle that I would have been worried if Soto didn't crush it. It was just a horrible spinning slider. But comes back to Aaron Judge, next hitter, 2 fastballs, and just showing no fear, vanquishes him on another slider with 2 strikes and, just sends him packing in 3 pitches after the homer. So that was the first inning. There were some good things. Went 3 innings, debuted a new split, which they're calling a change, which didn't throw it a lot, but it was really, really, really good. Give me your thoughts on the new arsenal and the new power and the swings and the misses and just how sexy the whole thing looked.
Yeah, I heard it's a splitter. I need to double check that with him and actually go talk to him about it. And I cannot wait to talk to him about it, because if it's a split, that's awesome. Like, that's really, really good for his arsenal. If he's able to throw strikes with, his other pitches, specifically with his fastball, and he just needs something else to help him work, like, the split is a perfect option for him, I think. And yeah, it looked really, really good. He dominated with a high velocity fastball, like we had mentioned. This improved changeup, which is seemingly a split. 2 variations of his slider. He brought back the harder version of his slider as well. So able to throw 2 different types of sliders, also mixed in 1 curveball. But the split or changeup has more velocity and more depth. The harder version of his slider, I thought, looked really nice. To be able to mix that in and get some swing and miss was huge. Like, Matt Manning is finally getting whiffs with his slider and changeups and fastballs. Like, this is like a brand new Matt Manning. I hope you guys can hear it in my voice how excited I am, because this is something that we've all said, like, if Matt Manning can put it together, he can be the best out of the Mize, Skubal, Manning type group. Like, that's always been part of the conversation. Now, Tarik Skubal has taken himself to new heights, and I don't want to discredit that at all, but that was kind of always a talking point, was like, Matt Manning has enough raw talent to be the best out of that trio. And for the first time, I feel like he's getting close to being a frontline type starter. Like, we saw it in a flash today, and I hope it stays. I hope we see it again next time out and the time after that, because he's onto something. And I also want to talk about who this guy is, like, behind the scenes and what he's like. Like, this guy he has an edge. He has an absolute edge. Like, the way that he came out of the clubhouse today and was talking to, a group of 3 reporters, and just, he was being short. He was kind of being like, he wasn't really explaining, very in depth. He was pretty flippant the way he was talking. Like, he seems like he's pitching pissed off, and he seems like he's just kind of ticked in general, and he's pitching with this edge. There's a level of compete that I think that we're seeing out of Matt Manning that we haven't seen before. I'm sure that's a product of how much work he put in the offseason. I'm sure that's a product of the fact that it's a really crowded room in the rotation. But this is a new Matt Manning, both with that edge and with the stuff.
So let me repeat to everybody what he told my partner today. There were probably a few other writers there too, but here's what you wrote. I don't think I'm competing for anything. If anything, I'm competing with myself and how good I can be. They're going to take the best 5 pitchers out of camp. I know who I am as a pitcher. I'm just going to do me. That's what Matt Manning told you guys after today's start. And, weirdly, gotta love it, because look, Maeda, lock for the rotation if he's healthy. Flaherty, lock for the rotation if he's healthy. Skubal, lock for the rotation if he's healthy. Okay? Leaves 2 spots early, maybe 3 spots. We'll see if they piggyback 2 guys, but probably for sure 2 spots for 3 guys. Matt Manning, he announced his candidacy very loudly today. Okay.
And that was interesting to me, Mark, because this is a guy coming into camp. I think it really looked like it was going to be Reese Olson and Casey Mize. And the more that we're watching now, I think it's looking like the Reese Olson and Casey Mize could ultimately be the battle for that last spot. If Matt Manning keeps doing what he's doing right now, he's got one of those spots locked up, no question about it. I asked him too, I said, Matt, what's your mindset right now? Because he was being short with some of the questions that were being asked. Like, he seemed like he was frustrated. Again, like, one of the questions that he was asked was, how do you feel about facing, those Yankees, hitters in the top of the lineup? And he kind of just flippantly was like, sure, why not? Like, they're in there, so I'm going to face them, whatever. Like, he kind of blew it off like it was no big deal. I said, man, what's your mindset right now? Like, where's your head at? He said, quote, pitch, throw hard, win, end quote. Like, that's where he's at right now. And so if he's doing that and has his edge and he's using it to his advantage, and then the stuff looks as good as it does, like, he's a lock. No question about it. And then it's up to, okay, is it going to be Casey Mize or is it going to be Reese Olson?
All right. All I can say about that is all business. He was all business. He was all about his business. That was it.
I love it.
Okay. So let's see how far that takes him. It was a pretty unbelievably impressive 3 innings today. All right. Let's talk a little bit about Casey Mize. I think we have to, before we do this, add some context to something. Casey Mize is not pitched in a major league game in 23 months, I think, if I have the time right. And it takes a while. Look, Casey Mize, for all you want to say about power and precision, he's still a lot of touch and feel and thinking to how he throws. It's a big part of his game. And I think until you face hitters that are not on your team in a batting practice situation, like guys in a different uniform, major league guys, it's going to take him a few times to find out what he has, what he doesn't have, when the adrenaline's pumping, what he can execute, what he can't execute. And I think in the 2 innings today, that's a lot of what we saw. He didn't really know. The velocity was, for the most part, I'd give it a 7.5 to an 8. Okay. And his fastball to the arm side, the right side, was surprisingly well commanded and really effective. Every other type of fastball kind of spraying it. And I'm not sure he threw even one good caliber breaking pitch. What were your thoughts watching?
Yeah, it's obviously a command issue right now for Casey Mize, as it has been for his first 2 starts. But you're right. It's been a while since he's been able to pitch at the highest level. He's still searching for the fastball command. I think, again, we talk about fastball command is life. Like, it starts with the fastball. And we talked about that with Jack Flaherty. I think it applies to every pitcher that the Tigers have. Like, you have to be able to locate. And if you can't locate, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So he talked about feeling jumpy to the plate, his arm moving behind the rest of his body because he's moving so fast down the mound because of some extra adrenaline. He is moving better as a whole, which I think is good. That's why we're seeing the uptick in velocity. His mechanics are significantly better than they used to be. A lot of that's because, A, working with Robin Lund, and B, the fact that, he had a major back surgery that he described as a life-changing back surgery. So he's able to move better down the mound. That's a really good sign. But he's throwing a lot of fastballs, clearly wants to get the command of that before mixing his other pitches more often. But he needs to get the command locked in. Like, it's been 2 outings now without optimal command. And at a certain point, we do have to start talking about this thing rolling over into, the end of March and into April. And like, where do things really go? I understand it's March 3rd and that's really early. But at the same time, if we don't see it out there next time, and then the time after, you start to run out of time to get that command locked in, and you got to get the fastball command locked in before you're really going to feel confident going to all your secondary pitches. So it's going to be a blend of both for him, but I'd like to see some command out of Casey Mize sooner rather than later. I'm not worried long-term, but in terms of opening the season and how that kind of looks, I think it's important for him to get that command locked in.
Agreed. And would not shock me, minor leaguers will be here within the next 10 games. They'll start really playing for real games. I don't think they played too many games back there yet, but within the next 10 days, I think not the next start, but the start after that, it would not shock me if Casey Mize threw a start that they stretched him out and could allow for some extra things in a backfield start. So start number 4, I'll be interested to see where it is, what it is, and how long it is, because Casey Mize could use a 60-pitch start to work on some things in an environment that was competitive, that was game-like, but maybe was not as life or death as a big league spring training game.
No, it's not life or death in the big league spring training. It's almost a better environment because in those backfields you put A-ball kids out there and all they want to do is swing away to try to get a hit off Casey Mize. Like, that's almost a worse environment to put him in, I think. And again, you're Casey Mize and you've worked all this time to get back to being in competition and you're going to get thrown into the backfields. Like, I don't think he would respond very well to that. That's just my opinion on it. Again, like, maybe he feels differently, but if I had to guess, I would guess that he wants to be on the big league spring training field, if you will, pitching against real guys, like, no matter what it is. I just think I think it really comes down to he needs to get more comfortable throwing in these games. Like, he mentioned, the adrenaline is still high. Like, that is going to slow down as he gets a little bit, deeper into this. Now, what does that do velocity-wise? I'll be interested to see as well. But I ultimately think that he just has to keep getting more reps, and we'll see how long it takes. But again, it can't take too long. Like, that's the problem. If it takes until start 4 for him to start feeling the fastball command, I don't know how I feel about his chances of being on the opening day roster in that starting rotation.
Yeah, well, if he had to throw in Toledo for 2 or 3 starts, I don't think it's the end of the world.
No,
but,
it's not.
Like I said, I think we need to see what the next 2 starts bring, and we need to also be sensitive enough to understand that he hadn't thrown in a big league, he hadn't thrown off a mound against real hitters in 2 years. I mean,
Indeed.
Takes a little time to find out what you have and just get your body to repeat the movements and to execute. So we'll see what's up. All right, we're going to take our last break. We'll be back in a minute. Alrighty, so he had a visitor on the road trip today to go play the Yankees. AJ, and all of his clever, nuanced player development, understanding what's what kind of way, took one Jackson Jobe on the road trip today to go see the Yankees, see the big park, see what it looked like when all those guys were in a game. And after the game, he got a chance to do some fun stuff. So share with us the story.
Yeah, it was actually before the game. He got a chance to meet up with Garrett Cole in the tunnel down there outside of the visitors clubhouse. And I thought it was a really smart move by AJ Hinch, like using that psychology degree to his advantage for sure. And the connection with Garrett Cole from their time together with the Houston Astros. AJ, about a week ago, had let Jackson Jobe know that he had set up this meeting for, Jackson and Garrett to meet and get a chance to talk. Garrett Cole is somebody that Jackson Jobe has looked up to for his entire career. So Jobe and Cole are sitting down for about 15, 20 minutes talking about baseball. And, Jobe says he asked one question, but he couldn't remember what the question was. And then Garrett Cole just did all the talking and basically talked for 15, 20 minutes straight about all things that Jackson Jobe would want to know. Jobe said the biggest takeaways for him was just kind of learning about how to go about the day-to-day during the season, how to manage his routine. Again, like practicing in between starts and kind of locking in his mentality in those bullpens, making it game rep-like, even though, you can't go out there in midweek bullpens and like let it rip like you do in the game. You still have to mentally try to like lock in and make it like a game situation without overthrowing, if you will, right? Without trying to throw 100 miles an hour in a bullpen, midweek. Can you still work on things in those situations while locking in mentally and kind of getting that mentality right? That was the biggest takeaway he said that he had from talking with Garrett Cole. I thought that was really cool. Garrett Cole, obviously one of the best to do it, won the Cy Young. I mean, he is as real as it gets, one of the best pitchers of this generation. And so, yeah, I thought it was a really, really good thing for Jackson Jobe to be able to get that opportunity. I also think it's going to be awesome because we're going to see him in a spring training game at some point. That's the plan. That's the hope, is that he's going to be able to get into a game, and not sure exactly when that's going to be because they're on this extremely, extremely slow ramp for him. He actually has only thrown 2 live batting practices. He threw his first live BP, and then on Friday he threw his second live BP against rehabbing outfielder Kerry Carpenter and backup catcher Carson Kelly. He actually struck out Carpenter twice, but then in the third matchup, Carpenter got a hit against him. So they've had a little bit of battle on the backfield. But again, it's only been 2 live BPs for Jackson Jobe. So the next step, sooner rather than later, is going to be getting into a game. And I would expect that to be a big league spring training game, whether that's before he gets sent out of camp or after he gets sent out of camp. I would expect to see him in a big league spring training game. I can't wait for that. I've already talked to him about it. He's really excited for the opportunity. But again, to meet your, a pitcher that you've looked up to for your entire career and be able to pick his brain, there's nothing better. It's great. It's going to be really good for him, I think, in the long run. He'll always be able to reflect back on it. And I want to add one other thing. He's already talking about October, Mark. I asked him about how he's feeling about the slow ramp in spring training. He said, quote, "I want to impress people, but I don't need to go out there and try to do too much. I'm a lot more mature in that aspect. I understand that it's a long season. My goal is to pitch in October. February or March is great, but I'll do anything to pitch in October," end quote. I think that's encouraging.
I'm pretty encouraged. I think I'm on record to say good chance to me he's in the rotation by 1st of June. Excited to see what he has. Wouldn't be shocked if either late in the week or a week after next, he does get to throw in a game. Wouldn't shock me if it was a TV game. They're not dumb. Excited to see what he does. Might be a little nervous, but I'm sure it'll be a little fun. All right, we've talked about nothing but pitching for 50 minutes, but let's talk a little bit about some of the guys that's swinging some lumber. Gio Urshela played a few games at third base. Not exactly moving around like a 22-year-old, but seems to be rounding into shape. I think we need to keep in mind he did not get to come to spring training early and work out. I'm sure he was working out, but this first week here is kind of getting acclimated, and I'm sure as time goes on, we'll see a little bit more. What are you seeing from Gio?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've seen a guy that obviously came into camp without any live batting practice. Like when he got here, it was his first live BP on his first day. So he's somebody who I think we're going to have to see how this kind of develops over time. But what I'm looking for out of Gio Urshela is I'm looking for power. I don't just need homer power, but I'm talking I want to see some doubles power. I want to see some doubles power. I want to see him driving the ball into the gaps, getting back into the hard hit that he had prior to the injury, going back, before. Well, look, like going back to when he was with the Minnesota Twins in 2022, he was hitting the ball and he was driving it. He wasn't doing that as much last season. Then he had the pelvis injury that ended up shutting him down for the rest of the season, and now he's coming back off of that. That's a major injury. So I want to see if he's able to get back into the power. I want to see if he still moves the same way that he used to at third base. That's the big thing for me. If he's not getting into that power, I'm going to have a little bit of concern about how he factors in. I mentioned this when the Tigers hired him. I'm going to reiterate it now. He's not an everyday player. He wasn't brought in to be an everyday player. He certainly has the potential to be one, but that doesn't mean he's going to be an everyday player. Just because his name is Gio Urshela and he has been an everyday player before, it doesn't mean that's going to be the case this year. So I'm looking for power out of him as we move forward in spring.
All right, before we talk about Andy Ibanez, home run leader in spring training, I do want to slip something in on you. You saw a couple swings from Matt Verling today. I tweeted some stuff about it. You and I have talked about it quite a bit. Smoked a double down the line and left. It does look like some of the swing tweaks regarding his load, it subtly looks different. At least it looked different to me, someone that watches those kind of things. I'm curious if you've noticed anything. And obviously, a swing tweak like that to allow him to pull the ball and get to his power a little more would be a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I noticed on the first day of spring training, and I'm going to have to tease that, all right? Freep.com, be ready. The story will come out eventually about Matt Vierling and the swing tweak. But no, it's obviously different. He's doing a much better job of keeping his hands active during his load to be able to get to the ball quicker, as opposed to, kind of a traditional bat on the shoulder type setup. He's keeping those hands moving, and he's, moving them kind of in like a circular motion, if you will, near his chest to kind of keep the bat out front, and he's able to go attack the pitch a little bit easier that way. It's a really good sign. We'll see if it holds up against high-level velocity, but anything Matt Vierling to the pull side, whether it's a home run, whether it's a double, whether it's a line drive, that goes over the third baseman's head, you're going to take it. You're going to be encouraged by it. We want to see him keep getting into the pull side while still being able to hit the ball the opposite way. Like, we can't remember how valuable that is. He was still a hitter who hit 270 because he drove the ball to the right side of the field and he put it on the ground and shot it through. And that was kind of the bread and butter for Matt Vierling. So there's going to have to be a balance for him. I think it's really good what he's doing with the load of his swing, getting to the pull side a little bit more. But He's got to find the balance because he cannot forget that his bread and butter is to the opposite side of the field. That's how he makes his money, right? And so he can make a lot more money if he gets into the pull side, but you can't forget, what your strengths are.
All right, quick. Andy Ibanez just torching left-handed pitching, just torching everybody.
And righties.
Yeah. So, look, here's the deal. Andy Ibanez was one of their best hitters from June 1st on last year. So him hitting, not that unusual. The thing I'd like to bring up is if he's going to continue to mash, Andy Ibanez is going to play. He's going to take some at-bats away from somebody somewhere more
Gio
than
Urshela.
Gio Urshela. He might play some second base from time to time. He might play some right field from time to time, or he'll play third base and Matt Vierling will go to right field. There's lots of ways to get Andy Ibanez in the lineup. DH also, obviously. For sure, when a lefty's in, he's going to be in there. But the question is, how many at-bats is he going to get against righties? But if he keeps swinging it, man, you find a place for a guy like that, right? So
that's the big question. The Tigers have Gio Urshela, they have Matt Vierling, and they also have Andy Ibanez, and all those guys are right-handed hitters. And Tigers feel pretty confident about all of them against lefties. But the question is who's going to hit the best against righties out of that group, and whoever emerges is going to get the most playing time one way or the other. The Tigers have enough optionality in their lineup to move guys around. So when push comes to shove, out of those three, you better hit righties, because if you want to be as close to an everyday player as you can, you got to be able to hit that handedness.
All right, real quick, 3 other guys we need to talk about before we get out of here. First guy, Jordan McKinstry. It looks like May Jordan right now.
8 walks and 14 plate appearances, Mark. I have some investigating to go do. This guy is back.
Made a few swing tweaks himself. Looks pretty damn good. And I think, as we've discussed many, many times in the last 2 months, and I heard Dan Dickerson talk about it at length today, look, Zach McKinstry plays good defense wherever you put him. And that's a lot of places, man. That's literally, 6 places on the baseball field. He plays average to plus defense. So if you don't think he's going to be on the team, you're not paying attention. So off to a really good start. All right, let's talk about the man, the myth, the guy on everybody's tongue, the 7th inning terror, Edie's Leonard. So seems to be a guy everyone wants to talk about. Give me your thoughts quickly and tell me what you're seeing.
Yeah, I haven't seen enough from Eddie's Leonard to know one way or the other yet. I think it's way too soon. But yeah, a couple of doubles, a home run, obviously has drawn the walk, hasn't struck out in 14 trips to the plate. That's impressive. That's something that I'm definitely well aware of. This is a guy who hit really well in AAA Toledo after the Tigers acquired him. He made the jump from AA to AAA when the Tigers got him at the trade deadline. If you remember, the Erod deal fell through with the Dodgers, and then the Dodgers were looking to move on from Eddie's Leonard. They had him DFA'd, and the Tigers ended up just getting him for cash considerations. He hit .302 with 8 homers in 40 games for the Mud Hens. I don't know. He was okay. I thought he was solid. He hits the ball hard. He makes good contact. But again, what is he big picture at the big league level? I have no idea yet. I think it's too soon to tell.
I can promise you he's not an everyday shortstop in the big leagues. Kind of looks like Jose Uribe. Does not feel like Jose Uribe. The other thing I'd like to always keep a big picture set of facts about any guy. Yes, he is hitting well, and he really hit well at the end of last year. He also hit .254 in the Texas League, walked 7.5% of the time, and the shrewdest talent evaluation organization in baseball let a 22-year-old that has all those skills off their 40 essentially for free. So if you want to tell the story, tell the whole story. Okay. Lastly, we've seen some good at-bats. Would like to see more. Justice Bigby, kind of impressive, yeah?
I like how many opportunities he's getting, how many ABs and in plate appearances he's getting. But what I find even more impressive is actually the outfield defense has been pretty awesome so far. He had a great diving catch in one of the games. Also in Bradenton against the Pirates, I thought he did a great job tracking the ball back into his left. That was a really tough ball to get on, and he ended up making a really good read and going down and chasing it down. That's been his big focus, is working on the defense. There's no question the bat's going to play. He makes good swing decisions. He has good contact rates inside the strike zone when he does swing. And then also he hits the ball for power. He exit velocities are great. So when you have that combination, you're going to hit. The bat's going to play. The question's going to be, where does he fit in defensively? And that's the big question for the Tigers across the board with a lot of their players, is where do they fit defensively? And I think I've liked what I've seen so far from Justice Bigbie in the outfield. He's going to keep on working with George Lombard out there, and we'll see if he ends up sticking and what that looks like. But he's a guy who's going to go to AAA Toledo. He's not going to break camp with the Tigers. Just making that very clear for people out there who are hoping that he makes the opening day roster. Not happening. But if he hits and he's able to play outfield, he could challenge some guys at some point. He really could.
Keep swinging. PDI, pretty damn impressive so far. So, good things. Jay Hens had a few swings too. Nothing jumping off the map, but not terrible either. Lastly, before we get out of here, and we'll make this short, you wrote an article, I think, published yesterday about JD Martinez. I think you and I both agree it was a really good idea in November. Once Marcana ended up on this baseball team, you know, the idea of JD Martinez being a Tiger pretty much became null and void and moot. Now, if they want to add him, Evan Petzold, the Mark Gorehouse, will be happy to pick him up at the airport. We're all for it. It's just not happening, you know. And guys that write articles in the first week of March saying JD Martinez should be a Tiger, well, I got a chuckle out of that. So, but yeah, that doesn't seem to be in the mix, nor even a consideration, right?
Not happening.
Not happening. And Evis said this. Yeah, this is maybe the 11th time he said not happening. So going back to sometime early before Christmas. So, all right, been a fun week. It's time to get out of here. I want to remind everybody to rate, share, and subscribe wherever you listen. Apple, Spotify, the free, wherever. You feel free to leave a nice review for Evan. You can tell him how much you hate me. And like I said, you can always find us embedded at the Freep at freep.com every time Evan Petzold writes an article. I'd like to thank our executive producers, Kirk Crawford and Jeanette Delgado. Our Free Press editor, Nicole Avery Nichols. Our producer, the man who saves us every single damn week, Robin Chan. Shout out to my grandson. Maybe I'm even going to see him this week. And a shout out to the spectacular Savannah Petzold. Till next week, more baseball and peace.